Hey, it's Alex with Lover Fighter Writer, and in this video, I'm going to talk all about the risks of AI replacing fiction writers and the ethics of artificial intelligence in business, generally speaking, as well as specifically when it comes to writing fiction. So, just to cover my experience in the realm of writing and AI writing in general, I've been using AI writing tools probably since within a few months of when they became popular in commercial circles. Now, AI writers existed before that. Obviously, they didn't really gain popularity until they came commercially available. And so the tool that I'm using right here is called Jasper, and it's a good example of a commercial AI writer. It was one of the first ones to come out and really start promoting itself to writers as an AI writing assistant. And I got into this game pretty early, and I've been doing this for, I think, a little over 2 years now, using these tools to assist in my writing. And I also have a somewhat unique experience as a writer and as a user of AI writing tools because I started out as a fiction writer and I still write fiction, but I used to do that a lot more and I used to do it professionally as a ghostwriter. And since then, I got into business writing, such as copywriting and content writing. Now I'm a digital marketer and I offer a variety of marketing services as well as copywriting and content writing. And I still write fiction and sometimes I help others improve their fiction writing or coach them. I'm currently working on a novel, and I recently entered a short story into a contest that did fairly well. I also write content and copy pretty much every day for my own business and for my clients. You might think that someone who's in both those circles would be common, and I'm certainly not the only one, but it's actually fairly uncommon for someone to be really heavily invested in both fiction writing and business writing, like content and copywriting, because although both of those things involve writing words and sentences and paragraphs, and there are skills that transfer well between them, such as grammar and creativity and storytelling, there's really not as much crossover as you might think, because a lot of creative fiction writers don't really like business writing, and a lot of business writers don't see the appeal of creative writing. So I'm certainly not unique in that I'm into both of those things, but it's not as common as you might think for writers to be into all these different types of writing. So I'm in both those camps, and I have quite a bit of experience using AI writing tools, and I've been with them since they became fairly popular in commercial writing circles. And so I just wanted to give you a quick overview of my experience with this kind of thing. And now I'm going to get right into the issue of AI being used for creative fiction writing and the ethics of using AI in business and in writing. Now, the initial reaction to AI writing being introduced as a commercially available online tool was fairly different among fiction writers than it was among business writers. And that was kind of interesting to me because in business writing communities, most people fell into one of 3 or 4 categories. You had people who immediately embraced AI writing tools because they saw it as a great opportunity and a great way to streamline their work and be more efficient. And so they kind of dove right in and got right to it. Then there are people who kind of turned their nose up a little bit to AI writers and said, well, I don't use AI. I don't need it. I will never use that. And I was kind of in that camp at first. I don't think I ever thought to myself or said that I would never use the tools. However, I did initially feel like, I don't need this because I'm a pretty proficient fiction writer and also a pretty proficient content and copywriter. So I was already, had good clients, didn't have any problem producing enough content, and I also have a very kind of creative and unique process to the way that I write. So I didn't really feel like I needed those things, and initially I didn't use them for I think just a few months after I initially learned about them, and then I started using them a little bit. And once I understood how they work and realized the potential there, I got into using them a lot in all different types of writing. Anyways, I was saying that there's kind of three or four different types of reactions, generally speaking, that I saw in the business writing community. So you have people who immediately embraced AI writing, you have people who kind of turned their nose up a little bit, and then may or may not have changed their mind fairly quickly or after more time. And then there's people who felt like they were at risk of being replaced by AI writers. And there's still, if you go into like freelance writing communities or AI writing communities, or even general kind of online business communities, you'll often see people who are just learning about AI writing asking questions like, is AI writing going to replace me? Or like, do I still need to hire writers? And things like that. The answer to the question is it won't replace most writers, and it certainly won't replace very good writers or writers who are very proficient at using the AI. Because, first of all, the AI writers are not like autonomous machines. They still need humans to run them. And if you can use them very efficiently, then you can develop a very streamlined content production process. And that is very good for business. And the other thing is that as good as AI writers are, a lot of companies and businesses and individuals who hire writers still highly value human input. And some of them don't want their writers using AI. Some of them don't care. Some of them specifically want their writers using AI. And there's a lot of different thoughts on that. But ultimately, I don't see highly proficient writers being replaced by AI or by weaker writers using AI, because while the AI is good for many things, it's not great at exploring very complex ideas or deep themes or maintaining a storyline over a long period of time or a large amount of text. And while those things all apply in different ways to the business writing world, they're actually much more important in the fiction writing world. And so it was interesting to me because, like I said, those were kind of the reactions of business writers when they started learning about the AI writing tools. And when the fiction writers started learning about AI writing tools, you did have people that had those reactions, but the vast majority of them, or at least a very vocal segment of them, seemed to have a very angry or perhaps fearful response to it. Whereas in business writing circles, people mostly said, this is a great tool, this can help me, or they said, I don't need this, I'm good without it. In the fiction writing camp, people had those opinions too, but there were also a lot of people who seemed very passionate about the idea that AI writing tools are a terrible thing, and it's going to devalue writers, and it's going to replace writers, it's going to make people lose work, and like very, very strong opinions from fiction writers, which seemed to fairly consistently be saying that AI writing is a bad thing for writers in every way. And I found this really interesting because, in my opinion, AI writing is less useful for fiction writing than it is for business writing, and it's very, very much further away from replacing fiction writers than it is for replacing business writers. And a lot of people don't realize this because, like I said earlier, there's actually not that much crossover between the two. So there's probably not a lot of people out there that are using AI at a high level for writing both fiction and business. And so I do use AI tools for both of those things, but I find it's much more useful and effective, and it replaces much more of the process or assists with much more of the process in business writing than it does in fiction writing. So to answer the question of whether AI will replace fiction writers, my answer to that is if it can, it's very far away from being something that's really commercially available. It's possible that there are AI writers out there somewhere that can write really good, effective stories that seem like they're written by a human. But I've never seen them, and I've worked with a lot of the best tools that are available right now. So if AI ever can write fictional stories as well as humans, I think it's a very long ways away. It's going to take much more to get AI writers to that level than it will take them to get to a level where they can write effective content and copy as well or better than humans. But with that said, there are a lot of really effective ways that creative fiction writers can use AI to help them through some of the areas that might be more frustrating, some of the parts of the fiction writing process that are a little bit more frustrating and a little bit more difficult for them, whether it's because it's just a difficult area or if it's because it's a weakness in their skill set. There's a lot of bridges that AI writers can help you cross, regardless of whether you write fiction or nonfiction or business content or whatever the case may be. Now, just to briefly touch on the ethics of using AI in business, in a minute I'll get into the best ways to use AI for fiction writing. Just to briefly go over the way I see the ethics of using AI, I had someone who I was talking to about capitalism recently ask me what I thought the impact of artificial intelligence on capitalism is. And my answer was that with the state that AI is currently at, that's like asking what the impact of animal labor or the internal combustion engine was on capitalism. What I mean when I say that it's like asking what the impact of animals and combustion engines are on capitalism. Anytime that you add something to business or to capitalism, there's always a chance that it may have some impact on the amount or the quality of work that is required of humans. So, with the examples of like labor animals or engines, obviously animal labor and machines are extremely beneficial to business and capitalism because they enable more work to be done more efficiently. Uh, but on the other hand, if you look at it from a purely, I guess, ethical or human rights type of perspective, then you could say that anytime that you introduce something like that, you are potentially removing jobs from people. If you're delivering products to your customers and you don't have engines or motors or labor animals, then you would need a lot of delivery people spread over significant space so that you could have them make deliveries on foot or on bicycles or something like that. And you would be providing a lot of fairly low skilled jobs to people across this broad area to fulfill all of your delivery requirements. But as soon as you add, horses that people can ride or vehicles, now you don't need as many delivery people, and those delivery people can cover much more ground much faster. So the job starts to require a little bit more skill and much fewer people. And there's many examples of that happening in history where something about the way that a lot of businesses operate is suddenly upgraded via technology. And then as a result of that, some people might lose jobs, some people might get new jobs, some people might start having to adopt a new skill in order to keep their job. And it's often looked at as a bad thing, and it certainly probably can be in certain circumstances. But there's this kind of strange perception that just because artificial intelligence is more new and advanced than anything we've seen in the past, that somehow that makes it bad, whereas, having cars or bicycles or planes is seen as more acceptable. But of course, like anything else, I think that the ethics really depend on how it's used and what the goals are behind its use. So, as an example specific to AI writing, BuzzFeed recently announced that they are adopting AI writing to generate ideas and write the content for their articles. And a lot of people were kind of upset by that, I guess, because, maybe that's going to mean that they can fire a lot of writers, that they don't need to have as many writers in order to generate all their content. And they might be upset because of that, or they might be upset because they like reading BuzzFeed articles and they like kind of the human aspect of them. They like the fact that they're written by other people about other people for them in a very kind of human engaging way. And so they might be upset that they're going to be I guess you could say, tricked by the AI into thinking that they're reading something written by a human when they're not. So there were a lot of people that seemed upset by that. But then apparently BuzzFeed's stock jumped significantly after they announced that they were going to be implementing AI writing, because evidently a lot of investors felt that that was a good thing and that that might make the company more profitable. The ethics of using AI in business as AI currently exists is basically the exact same as using any other advancement in technology, which is to say that it can be good or it can be bad based on how it's used and what the goals are behind its implementation. And for the most part, I think that so far the use of AI has been positive, but there are certainly negative implementations of it. Anyways, I've dwelled on that enough. I'm going to move right into how to use AI writing tools for fiction writing specifically. Now, one of the reasons that I believe that AI is much further from replacing fiction writers than it is from replacing content and copywriters is that AI is not great at writing prose, especially things like maintaining a specific character and dialogue styles and storylines over large amounts of prose. It seems to struggle with that. And another issue there is that most fiction writers, especially popular fiction writers who have a large body of work in their past, tend to be known for their narrative voice and for the type of language that they use and for the type of tone and energy and vibe that people get from their writing. And although AI can replicate that to a certain extent, it would be very difficult for an AI as they currently exist to really replicate that over the long term in an entire novel or even an entire short story. So I don't really recommend trying to use AI to actually write fiction for you or to write the prose for you, because it's not very good at it. And even if it could do it, that's it replacing the writer, which is not your goal as a writer, or at least my goal as a writer is to use AI to assist me. So what I use AI for in fiction writing is almost entirely idea generation, brainstorming, quick research. And one of my favorite things about AI is that you can ask it more complex questions than you can ask, for example, a search engine or your basic database of information. And so this is Jasper Chat that I'm in right now. It's based on the same software that runs ChatGPT, which has recently just blown up the popularity of AI writing in general. And so basically, I can just type whatever I want in this box here, as long as it's less than 4,000 characters. And Jasper's AI will read that and then respond. So I can ask questions, I can ask it to generate ideas or lists or basically anything I want, and it'll respond according to the vast amounts of research that it's done in the past. So I'm just going to scroll up a little bit and kind of show how some of the examples that I used that have to do with writing. The other day, I was writing a short comedy sketch, which is something that I started doing recently just for fun. And a friend of mine likes making short films and funny videos and things like that. And he sent me one that him and his friends made, and just watching it kind of gave me an idea for a sketch. So I wrote it and I sent it to him. And then I had another idea for one, so I wrote that and I sent it to him. And the second one that I wrote was kind of based around like a funny turn of phrase that modern people say. And so I got thinking to myself, maybe I could write other sketches about funny turns of phrase. And so I came into Jasper Chat here and I said, what are some silly modern turns of phrase that people say? And it gave me 5 silly turns of phrase. And then I said, give me 10 more. And it gave me 10 more. And I haven't really done anything with these yet, but this is just an example of how you can use it for brainstorming. Like I was thinking to myself that, silly things that people commonly say can be good material for coming up with comedy ideas. And so I just wanted a list of those. And it gave me a list of mostly fairly modern ones because that's what I asked for. I asked for modern turns of phrase. And then obviously another way that you can use these tools is just to get answers to questions and to get kind of custom instructions. So I asked it about some popular writing techniques and strategies, and it gave me some pretty good answers there. And then, as I've shown in other tutorials, one of the best ways to use the AI writing tools for like research and for learning things is to ask it a question like this. And then if you want to learn more about one of these points, then you can just copy either the first part or the entire point into the text box here, and then just ask it to expand on that or tell you more or tell you how you could use that in a certain way. And it's really good for kind of helping you guide your thinking when you're learning something or learning how to implement something. And then one of my favorite things about AI writers actually is that they're just great at generating lists and coming up with information that you would otherwise have to kind of labor over. And one of the things that I've always been terrible at is naming my characters, whether I'm writing fantasy or modern fiction or science fiction or anything else. I always struggle with coming up with names for my characters that I like. And when I wrote that short story I was talking about a few months ago, I was having trouble choosing names for the two main characters. And then I just came into Jasper Chat and I asked it for names of the type of person that they were, and it gave me some really great results. And so this is just an example that I did here. I said list 10 names appropriate for a male Canadian pop star from Northern Ontario, and it gave me some pretty interesting sounding names that you might associate with a male pop star. Then here I kind of came into how you can use it to develop ideas for stories. And so the first thing I asked it was to list the 10 most popular fiction genres, and it gave me this list. So I took the top two, which are fantasy and romance, and I said list the 10 most popular romance tropes. And if you're not familiar with romance writing, not all, but a lot of romance stories are based around a large group of existing tropes, which are just commonly used starting points for romantic stories or for different kinds of stories. Like there are also fantasy tropes and sci-fi tropes and so on. But the genre that I see tropes focused on the most is in romance, and I think that's because there are a lot of romance tropes that people like to read a lot of books on. So a lot of people who read a lot of romance tend to like books and stories that are within a certain set of tropes that are the most appealing to them. And so I got a list of tropes here. And then I came down here and I said, write 5 one-sentence plot ideas for a fantasy romance novel using the enemies to lovers trope and the billionaire trope. And I did that, and then I noticed that they were it seemed like the AI was kind of getting confused about using two tropes at the same time. So I came down here and I just said, write 5 one-sentence plot ideas for a fantasy romance using the enemies to lovers tropes, and then I figured I could just make one of the I could just make one of the characters very wealthy, and then that would implement the billionaire trope alongside the enemies to lovers trope. And so I got these plot outlines. And then I just asked the AI, why is extreme wealth appealing to non-wealthy people? And it gave me a kind of an interesting response to that. And so that's another way that you can use AI writers, is that if you're trying to explore a character's motivation or a character's perspective, and you're having trouble getting into their head, for example, if you have a villain who does something bad, and you're trying to give them a deeper motivation than just that they're evil or hateful or something, you want to give them a real reason for doing what they're doing. Even if you're having trouble coming up with something on your own, you could ask an AI writer just the same way that you could ask a friend or a fellow writer for input, and it might give you some insight that you would otherwise lack. And again, these are not a replacement for your own brainstorming. It's not a replacement for your own critical thinking. And it's not even a replacement for discussing things with friends or family members or other writers. That's all still very important. But in the same way that it's much more convenient if you're writing something and you need a piece of information that's not in your brain, it's much more convenient to just Google it than it is to like go to the library and look it up in a book. And in the same way, a lot of things are much more convenient when you can just quickly ask an AI for an answer rather than having to Google it and read through a few different articles, or rather than having to, ask a friend or two, or whatever the case may be. There's just a lot of occasions where using AI in this way is very convenient and very fast and very helpful for writers. So, in terms of the writing for business, I think I already mentioned that my favorite way to do that is just to ask the AI a question and then use what it says to generate further questions, whether you want more similar ideas or you want a further explanation or an elaboration or you want more details on how to do something. So like I did here, I just said list the top 5 novel writing strategies and it gave me those. And then if I wanted to know more about those, I would just, for example, know your audience. I could copy that and I could say, give me a 5-step process for learning how to know your audience as a fiction writer. And it would give me, those steps. I could ask for more steps. I could ask for elaboration on each of those steps. And so you can do that kind of thing with, for example, marketing strategy or learning how to use e-commerce effectively. So you can use that for a lot of things related to business, especially online business. And that's my favorite way to use it for business. Obviously, you can also use it to help you write copy or to help you improve your copy or your content. But I've got tons of videos on my channel about those things, so I don't want to get into those details right now. But if you do want to learn more about how to actually use these tools for business writing or for creative writing, then I would definitely recommend subscribing to my channel. All right, that's it for this video. Feel free to leave me your comments about AI writing as it relates to business or creative writing, or anything that you have to say about the ethics of it or AI in general. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me, I'm always happy to read your thoughts and to kind of learn more from them and do my best to respond to them so that we can have a conversation about this. Also, I do have an affiliate link for Jasper in the description if you want to sign up for a free trial. And I'll also link to my AI Writing Facebook group in case you want to jump in there to learn more from me and to have access to a community that is highly invested in AI writing.